I'm Josh, the director here at Trident, and today I'm very pleased to say I'm joined by Naveen Vasudeva, the CEO and founder at the CyberTree Paradox. Naveen, how are you?
I'm very well, mate. How are you?
I am very well. I'm surprised you haven't got the scenery of the Dubai skyline behind you just to really rub it in.
So I didn't want to rub it in, but actually I'm looking at the Dubai skyline over there. Yeah. So yeah. I decided I didn't want any more abuse from people, so I'm just next to the window.
Look, thank you for coming on and joining us, Naveen. Just for the listeners and the viewers, tell us about yourself, your background as a CISO and a leader within the industry, to how you kind of come to found the CyberTree Paradox.
Sure. So I've been working in cybersecurity, oh God, like 26 years. When I say it out loud, that sounds so old. I feel old. Yeah, I started my career very early. I never went to university. I went straight out of college into the workplace as a developer. I probably spent about 3 years or 4 years in a development role, doing various things for Dow Jones and Reuters, and I worked for a private software house, building stuff for DHL. It's all good fun and good experience. Got my first sort of major break in cybersecurity at Deutsche Bank, actually in the 90s, and I could say the rest is history. I've just had a really good support system, really good mentors, people that invested time in educating me about cybersecurity from a technical perspective, but also spending time with me to understand what it meant to be a leader and the difference between managers and leaders and the responsibility you have as a leader, which opened up avenues for me to work across the world. I've worked in Hong Kong, Japan, Singapore, now the Middle East, across the continent, running large scale cybersecurity functions for tier 1 organizations, in financial services, oil and gas, petrochem. So it's been really good, varied experience over the years.
Nice.
I suppose to your question as to why I started the CyberTree Paradox, I think the complexities around cybersecurity and just the way the industry is now, I feel like it's become so much harder for people to digest cybersecurity topics. There's so many suppliers and vendors out there that are competing for the same space, that are creating a level of confusion in the marketplace. There's a huge amount of mis-selling by vendors to organizations, especially SMEs, SMBs, small enterprises. I think someone needs to champion those organizations so that they could get access to cybersecurity knowledge. They could get access to much more cost-effective advice. Why should it be that only large corporates who can afford to pay for the likes of KPMG, Ernst & Young, and Deloitte, who are accounting firms, actually, not cybersecurity firms. So you ask your accountant how to do cybersecurity. So we've got to disrupt this marketplace. And you should be you wouldn't go to a lawyer to seek advice on your health. You would go to a doctor.
Great.
So, I think it's time that us as practitioners, we start challenging that thought process, demystifying the way that we talk about cybersecurity, and really just apply some pressure on organizations to rethink who they go to when they speak about cybersecurity.
Very, very good point. Look, we're not here to bash vendors, right? But do you think that the majority of the reason why that has become the confusion and the state that the industry is in is because it's the more noise and confusion we can create as a vendor, and the more I can wrap the customer up in circles and entangle them into terms, I can sell, right? Because it's almost like the old school FUD way of selling, right? So is that the purpose of your mission, or your mission now, to kind of simplify that and make it plainer and English?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And by no means am I criticizing vendors or their practices. Actually, it's entirely the opposite. I want transparency between vendors, suppliers, and organizations. We as CISOs or practitioners, we can't operate without tools and technology. It's impossible. How do we start to communicate more effectively with our suppliers about what our challenges are in the marketplace, what our challenges are as a business, and instead of them trying to force sell something, they actually take the time to understand that issue and then have an appropriate response to it. So I see it all the time on LinkedIn, to the point around bashing. I'm too busy to talk to a supplier. I'm too busy to take a sales call. I'm too busy to do this. Now, I think there's so much fatigue in the marketplace. Everyone is doing everything online. It's, video call after video call, conference call after conference call. I would appreciate if a supplier actually said, okay, what are your concerns about the things that you're doing and your business is doing, and how can we help you solve those concerns? Rather than their traditional sales teams trying to sell you stuff you don't need. So partly about, to your point, partly about language, but it's also about approach. I think we just need to change the way that we're approaching our relationships, because if we start thinking in a slightly different way about what our challenges are, then we'll be better off in that, that global cybersecurity community. Because if we're not sharing information, we all have risks, we all have issues with our technology. The question is, how do we come together as a global cybersecurity community and make effective change? And I think it starts with the CISO talking to a supplier in a much more open manner.
So, yeah, I totally agree. So let's talk practically. What's the plan? How are you going about doing that? How are you going to achieve that? And obviously, I'm sure you've thought about this before launching, but tell us more about the actual details of the business and how you're going to, achieve the mission.
So we've done a couple of things, and the business is divided into probably three segments. One is that we're trying to produce, or we are producing, the CyberTree Paradox podcast. I mean, it's a free access to free information. This is senior leaders, senior thought leaders talking about cybersecurity and its practical implications. So it's not me just talking to every CISO I know in my black book. I'm talking to real life people that have been impacted by cybersecurity in some way, and or are a CEO, CTO, CFO. They're different people with different experiences in cyber. So you would assume that in a lot of tier one, let's talk about tier one organizations where you have a very senior member of the cybersecurity team may report into a CFO, CTO, and in some cases a CEO. In a lot of cases, they don't have budget approval. They don't have access to budgets. They probably, and I speak from my experience and that of my peer group, have to go through hoops to get something approved.
Yeah.
So if it's not strategic, then it's very difficult. So let's talk about the people that actually have the influence to make change when it comes to cybersecurity, and generally that's the C-suite. So the challenge there is getting people to listen to the message. It's getting people to buy into it. The other thing that we're actually doing then is I'm working with the vendor community to now start to produce, again, free content around cybersecurity subjects. So we started with a particular vendor, and we've now produced actually 4 documentaries. One is available online. The first one was based around threat intelligence, and this is bringing the cybersecurity community together and me challenging and debating. So I actually wrote and produced this series with the supplier. But it's using that peer group to say, well, what is threat intelligence? Why is it important? What do we need to do about it? And how can we manage it effectively within our business? So if a supplier is willing to, and a vendor is willing to take that challenge on, I think that's great. That's a great step forward, because we're opening up that conversation in a much more effective way. We've done one on education, training, and awareness, which will be out this quarter. We've done one on secure by design, and we're just about to film one on event detection and response. So that's how I think we can start to constructively disrupt that marketplace. And then the last bit is really around our advisory service. I've looked at the way that advisors have been charging businesses for years, and it's absolutely ridiculous. From 10 grand a day to who knows what, right? It's just not. It's not a fair way to consume experience, right? Now the argument could be is they're not paying for the 2 hours that they do a piece of work. It's the 25 years worth of experience. But if I turned around and said the same thing, I would never have a business, right? It just wouldn't operate. But I want small businesses to to have that accessibility, to have the experience. So what we've created is actually a global network of individuals where we provide a subscription-based service. We tailor-made it for the SME and the SMB market. Everyone that works with the CyberTree Paradox has a minimum of 10 years operational experience. And we divide it into hours. We give these small businesses an annual subscription of cybersecurity. They get a risk professional, they get a control professional, they get a compliance professional. We give them education tools. We do pen testing for them. And as that package tier goes up, we add on services. So the bigger you are as an organization, the more things you get. But it's all about consuming things for that period of time. You don't need to sit someone on a desk and, you don't need to pay it. The logic of paying a pen tester £1,200 a day is just ridiculous, because 90% of that pen testers are going to kill me now, but 90% of pen testers, 50% automation. So what is it you're doing for the other 50% of the time, right? you're charging your client for doing nothing. And actually, part of our organization, we've got actually a really famous guy, Mike Jones, is actually part of my my global cybersecurity advisory board. Mike is a former Anonymous member of Anonymous. He's intelligence background, pen testing, so him and I have discussed this at length, and we just don't believe it's fair to the business community that you're going out there and using that skill set to overcharge someone. So, and you apply that logic across everything we do in cybersecurity. Why? It's we should be doing this as a global community to reset the way that we're providing service. Because I actually don't think it, again, I'm not bashing anybody, but if you're talking about the big four who put people through boot camps, right? 6 to 8 weeks of boot camps of cybersecurity, and then they're billing their customers £500 a day for a kid that has zero experience in operational application of anything. So you're mis-selling to your client, and you're generating huge income. So it's to me, let's constructively disrupt this entire environment and challenge the way that organizations pay for cybersecurity advice. So that's
amazing. It's amazing. I think it's and I'm sure you've thought about this long and hard. How do you do that? And it's got such a great moral kind of compass behind it without making enemies from vendors who are making millions. And if you look at post, I won't go into names of vendors and clients, but there are lots of post incidents, right, where a consultancy comes in, parachuted in, IR team come in, deploy, fair enough, do a great job, remediate and leave. The problem is they don't leave, they land and expand. And next thing you know, 3 years later, they've spent millions of pounds being attached to this organization because they made themselves so valuable, right? And sometimes the top CISOs, for example, need someone to look to or someone to blame when they go to board meetings and say something went wrong. Well, XYZ consultancy were on site and they were the ones that are managing all the IR. So can you speak to them?
It's really interesting because I look at it from a probably a slightly different perspective. I totally agree with what you're saying when they land and expand. So if you take what happened to the world after NotPetya, it's a great example.
That's exactly what I was thinking about.
It's an absolutely brilliant example. And again, I'm going to plug the episode 1 of our threat intelligence because we talked about NotPetya.
We'll put it at the bottom. We'll put the link in.
Definitely, because NotPetya, the impact on, and this is all publicly available information, but the impact on Maersk, the shipping company, was huge. But their automatic reaction was to go to a third party, right? So they saw it as a security failure of the internal team, and they go out and they hire an organization to come in. And you're absolutely right. 3 years later, that organization is still there and landing and expanding. Why would you do that? The question is, why would you not go to your security providers and start talking to them rather than go to a management consultancy? Right? It just doesn't make sense because they're the ones that can help you the most. And if you have those fostered relationships in the right way, you won't be spending millions of dollars on recovery, right? And actually, you've got to go to the resilience question. Invest your time and money in cyber resilience. Don't look for, actually, I can kick the can down the line and I can address it later. address it as part of your strategy. And this is where I want small businesses to operate. When we think about national threats, so if we're thinking about CNI, so critical national infrastructure, majority of critical national infrastructure is actually quite well protected, because they have to be, whether you're oil and gas or large financial services or government bodies. To a degree, anything that really is potentially at risk, you can imagine the amount of. I worked at HSBC. We invested huge amounts of time and effort. The world's largest private network. Right. Just think about that for a second. Yeah. So and all banks operate in a similar fashion.
Yeah.
Whereas if you think about what the most impact is, it's the mom and pop shops, it's the small business, it's the local accountant, it's the local law office. These guys, if they were impacted by a national threat actor, the likelihood is they'll be wiped out. They'll lose their business, right? So the people that are most at risk is A, the general public, and B, the small, medium-sized enterprise. Yeah. They just don't have the money to invest in cyber, or they just don't have access to the knowledge to do it. And they think it doesn't impact them. So we want to change all of that. And that's probably where I'm sorry, I get very passionate about this.
No, it's good. It's great. It's great to hear. It's really refreshing, actually, to see it being put to good use, all that experience that you have, and the team that you have coming on board, people like Mike Jones. So and this is a really broad question, forgive me here, but what's the ideal world look like for this, not in terms of the industry, but for your business in like 12 months time, 24, 36 months? What do you want to have achieved? Do you want to be a really sort of global team of producers that are creating great content and awareness and I suppose transparency, and then also have your cyber advisory services of like real leaders and a real sort of experienced team who can advise as and when?
Yeah, so I think it's both. I think we would want to be in a position where we're tackling issues that are important to both the community and the cybersecurity community and the business community. And I suppose the more relationships we build with suppliers and vendors that help us tell us those stories, because we don't make any money out of this, right? It's a lot of time and effort to do, to write and produce shows and film shows and record podcasts. That's not my core business. That's us as a organization wanting to give back, right? And I think we build that through our relationships with those suppliers, and the more suppliers that come on board to help us tell those stories, because actually a lot of them have got unique stories. So Kaspersky was the main guys that helped us with NotPetya, because it was their research team that actually figured it out, right? It's a great story to tell. Think about all of the suppliers that have and vendors that have actually solved worldwide problems that they don't tell their stories to a mass audience. Huge amounts, right? And I suppose the second bit then is, if I've got like-minded people that want to make that change, I want to work with you, right? Because that's amazing. Because actually, if we are truly about giving back to the community and saying that cybersecurity is important, it's part of your culture, it's part of your, how to do it on a personal level, why can't you operate in the same way at work, right? And it's about changing that behavior, changing that psychology, and basically making accessible services that are cost affordable, but done by cybersecurity professionals. So go back to that 10, 15, 20 years worth of experience. These guys are actually willing to invest their time and effort in helping organizations get secure. And if I think of it from a national perspective, whether that's Dubai or my home in the United Kingdom, I would think, actually, wouldn't it make sense then, we're trying to protect at a national level the entire population, right? Every small business signed up to something cybersecurity related. You're changing the landscape of the way cybersecurity is managed in a country, at a country level, and that could be mind-boggling if we could ever achieve something like that.
Well, so you got to try, right?
Exactly.
So here's, I suppose, a question for you that I kind of throw at all of our guests, and it's kind of non-related really, but I'd love to know more about Naveen personally, right? And the way I'm trying to get to that is, if you were not in this industry and you didn't have 25 years of experience in cybersecurity, what do you think you would have been doing?
I'd definitely been an actor of some sort. Actor, producer. I was absolutely obsessed and still am with TV shows. And I'll tell you a funny story. And then one of the reasons I wanted to be an actor, I don't know if you dream sequences in movies and dream sequences in TV shows. When I was about 5 to 7, I could not understand how they filmed the dream sequence because it was a dream. Yeah, so my mind was absolutely blown, and I figured it out afterwards. It's just another part of the show. But I would have loved to have got it. If I wasn't in cybersecurity, I would have definitely been in TV, films, movies, and I think that's where my passion has come in, wanting to write and produce the stuff around cyber. And what a great experience it's been, doing that. Yeah. So actually, in part, I've got to do what one of my dreams.
Yeah. You're kind of living it a little bit at the moment. Yeah. Imagine if the 7-year-old Naveen would have watched Inception. There's no way back from that.
No, that I would have totally lost my mind. Yeah.
Naveen, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. It's really refreshing to learn and hear of the mission and what you're trying to achieve, because it's not easy, right? You're trying to rewire the way we think about cybersecurity, the way it's been sold, the way it's been talked about, the way it's been digested. Having these real key leaders on board will obviously help that and give you a real penetrating access and an audience. But it's it's very refreshing to see you kind of fixated on making a change in a good way.
I really appreciate that, and I think I think there are a lot of people out there like me that probably don't have platforms to do it. So I would encourage anyone to come and have a conversation with me if they're interested about making change. If you're passionate about cybersecurity and you want to learn, we've got a lot of resources. We've got Martin Smith on the committee as well. Okay. Part of the SASIC. We've got Carla Reffold on the committee. She's our chairwoman. Right, who also has access to a lot of resources, and I believe with Trident as well, right? Cybersecurity is a very small world, and as I said, Mike Jones, Vinny Banderi is just a guru at risk, So we've got some really smart people that have come together to help us try and make change. And anyone that wants to get involved and is willing to give up their time, especially because, as I said, we don't get paid to do the podcast. We don't get paid. I mean, we don't make money to do the podcast or we make no profit from this. Yeah. It's really important that we continue as a community to build much more free content for people. And I would say lastly, and I'll hand back, if any supplier wants to come and help us build more stories, then please get in touch, because we would love to hear from you.
Absolutely. Where can they get in touch? I'll put the website at the bottom here so people can get in touch.
Yeah, it's just HTTPS, the CyberTreeParadox.com, and you can access all of our material that we've produced so far, all of the podcasts on there. There's some really, really, really great stories from really great people, very diverse. You can catch episode 1 of our documentary on there as well, and you can have a look at our services. Yeah, be great.
Awesome, and catch you on LinkedIn as well, right?
Yes, we're on all social media.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But awesome. LinkedIn primarily, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. You guys are amazing. Keep doing what you're doing, Naveen. And thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
Oh, no, I really appreciate it, Josh. Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers. Take care.